They are the most corrupt government I have ever even contemplated. You know, I'm 50 years old, so I've seen a few governments come and go. They're so corrupt that they don't care that we know they're corrupt.
I am a husband, a father, a lawyer, a Christian, and a proud Canadian. I started this series because it was clear that our nation needs truth. Not just another biased narrative, but real information of substance. We need access to facts and the freedom to think for ourselves. I'm Leighton Gray, and this is Gray Matter.
You know, what it is like for somebody to get dropped into a tornado right in the middle of it and try to make some sense of it. Originally, when I started the project, I just wanted to focus only on the convoy. But when I went to the Public Order Emergency Commission and I heard all the testimony, because I sat in that audience for 7 weeks, and I listened to what the government and the police thought, and I compared that to what we were doing, I had to write about those things. I had to do like a comparison of what they did versus what we did, and what we were thinking versus what they were thinking, and highlight what the end result was and why.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Gray Matter. Well, as you've gathered, we're going to be talking today about the Freedom Convoy, and we have a real treat for you today. We have a man on the show who was part of the sort of executive team who was right there on the ground, leading the charge, as it were, in terms of the Freedom Convoy. And he's written a very fascinating book about it. And we're going to explain why his book is different than some of the other ones that have been written about the Freedom Convoy, and why it's important that Canadians read it. His name is Tom Marazzo. Thanks for being on the show today, Tom. It's a pleasure to have you on Gray Matter.
Yes, thank you very much for having me. And I got to say, I think you're one of the first people to interview me about the book who's actually read the book. So thank you for that.
Well, guests on the show are always surprised that I never have anybody on here who's read a book, whose book I've not read. And a big part of it is I think it's important in order for me to have a meaningful conversation with you about the book. It's important that I've read the book and have something to offer about it, at least in terms of impressions and things like that. So it was my pleasure to read your book. And I'm very grateful to you for having taken the time, because I've said on this program many times that I think that the Freedom Convoy is the most important political and cultural event that has happened in this century. Perhaps it's in the top 5 in the history of our country. And, you know, it's important for us to make sense of it. I think that we're going to be talking about the Freedom Convoy for a very, very long time. And I think it's very important for people like you who have intimate knowledge of it to provide, you know, a perspective on it, so that the rest of us who weren't there and only saw it from a distorted distance, so that we get a better understanding of what happened there. And so I'm really hopeful that during this hour with you, we're going to get sort of a bit of a summary and understanding of your book and what it says and why it's important. Before we go there and sort of dive into it, as we always do, we have some framing aphorisms to get to. The first one is a meme, and this is a very familiar one from the Freedom Convoy period. It says, "Are you too dumb to understand science? Don't care if you get sick and die. Could you care less if you get other people, including your own family, kids, and strangers, sick and possibly killed? Do you want to keep the pandemic going forever, giving COVID every chance to mutate and get worse? Are you too big a baby to get another shot? Then join this bunch of idiots and prove you're a moron too." That's a sampling of what people like Tom were dealing with at the time. Here's one that's maybe a little more supportive. It says, "Truck drivers have hit the proverbial wall, and every tactile thing in your life is moved by them. This goes far beyond the mandate issue. That's just the snapping point for many. There are many factors at play, truckers being the constant proverbial scapegoat for a crumbling supply chain is front and center. I want to be clear that this has been brewing for decades." That's from an anonymous contributor. Here's something from a former Chief Justice, the longest serving Chief Justice in this country, Beverly McLaughlin. Former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Canada wrote an opinion piece in which she said, "Freedom is not unlimited, and the trucker protest in Ottawa showed an ugly side of freedom. Freedom without limits slides imperceptibly into freedom to say and do what you want about people who don't look like you or talk like you. Sadly, the Ottawa Truckers Convoy has revealed this ugly side of freedom. That's what she wrote. The sitting Supreme Court Chief Judge of our Supreme Court, Justice Wagner, in an interview with Le Devoir, characterized the protest on Wellington Street, where Parliament and Supreme Court are located, as, quote, the beginning of anarchy, where some people have decided to take other citizens hostage. That article reported that Wagner had also declared that, quote, forced blows against the state, justice, and democratic institutions like the one delivered by protesters should be denounced with force by all figures of power in the country, end quote. And then finally, from the man I consider to be the greatest living Canadian journalist, Rex Murphy, he said this: in the early days of COVID, truckers were being sung as heroes. That melody has ceased. It should be restarted. So who do we have in the show today? Well, Tom Marazzo. Tom has been dedicated to serving Canadians since 1990, when he joined the Army Reserve while still in high school. 8 years later, he enrolled in the Regular Force Army and was granted the commission of Combat Engineer Officer, soon rising to the level of captain. Tom worked in the Division Engineer Office in Toronto, where he participated in the G8 G20 Summit in 2010. While in the military, Tom earned a diploma in construction engineering technology and architecture and an MBA. He has been posted to various locations across Canada. And after 25 years of service, Tom retired from the armed forces in 2015, the same year that we got Justin Trudeau. He completed a 4-year Bachelor of Technology Software Development degree and immediately began teaching at a community college in Ontario until September of 2021. We're going to talk about this on the show, when he was fired for questioning the legality of vaccine mandates via campus-wide email to the president and members of the college faculty. He has described himself, quite accurately in my opinion, as someone determined to stand for the rights and freedoms of Canadians. Tom became a volunteer of the Canadian Trucker Freedom Convoy in 2022. Trained in battle planning over many years, Tom's tactical and strategic advice was instrumental to the safe and responsible achievement of convoy objectives. His experience was integral to the coordination of truck movements and logistics, as well as negotiations with police and liaison teams from the city of Ottawa. He has most recently written an incredible book that I've had the pleasure of reading, and I encourage all of you to read. In fact, I urge you to. It's called The People's Emergency Act, the Freedom Convoy 2022, and I'm happy to report it is, in fact, a #1 bestseller in this country, and it's now available in hardcover and paperback. So, Tom, could we go back maybe to the beginning of things, to what happened when you were at Georgian College? Because I think that's an important, maybe a seminal moment for you, when you became sort of awakened to what was going on in the country and how you could contribute to change. Because it seems to me, without that happening, you probably wouldn't have gotten involved with the Freedom Convoy. Would you agree with that?
I would absolutely agree with that, because as a result of getting fired from Georgian, I was basically forced to sell my house.
Oh, really?
And relocate. Yeah, we ended up relocating about 300 kilometers away, towards the Kingston area. We purchased land with the intention eventually of building a home on the land. And we were starting to look seriously at a parallel society, because I wasn't the only one. I wasn't, I was in a meeting last night online with a group of people that are saying, I don't think that they're done with this stuff, and people are hedging their bets, and they're looking at creating parallel economies because they don't trust the Canadian economy anymore. They don't trust the robustness of it.
Right.
And so I was in the same exact position. And at the time, you got to remember, New Brunswick and Quebec were looking at putting guards on grocery stores to stop people from buying food who didn't have a vax pass.
Right. Yes.
And we couldn't go to restaurants. You couldn't go to various public places if you didn't prove that you were, you had taken this experimental injection. So it was a very scary time. And had I not been fired, I wouldn't have been forced to purchase my house, relocate, And when I relocated, I met a couple of people that were, at the time, had no connection to the convoy because it wasn't a thing yet. But those people had relationships with other groups. And that is how I ended up being called. I answered a phone call from a friend of mine just to see if I could help out now that the convoy had arrived in Ottawa 2 days prior. So that's why, yeah, if I didn't get fired, I would not have been called. I wouldn't have been connected to anybody associated with the convoy.
And so your stand at Georgian College, where you were an instructor, was essentially against the vaccine mandates that were being imposed on faculty and students. Is that right?
Yes, and it was in September. It was the first week of September. Students had already paid, registered for courses, paid tuitions. Then they came out and implemented a mandate just prior to classes starting. And so it was really about the first week of school, the beginning, like I think a few days before the beginning of the semester started, when they had already captured everybody's money in registrations and took away all their options to go elsewhere. And the president sent out a campus-wide email. And I looked at that email and I said, absolutely not. Like, the law is not on your side. I don't understand how you think you're going to get around all of these different areas of Canadian legislation. And so I basically wrote an email reply and sent it out to everybody that I could think of to put on this email. And as a result, I got fired for cause a couple of days later for sending that email. And I didn't get to the point where I refused to get the job, which I would have. I got fired because I publicly, and I mean internally to the college, questioned the mandates. And I said, how do you think you're going to get around even basic informed consent?
Yeah.
Because right now you can't even meet the basic test for informed consent. So how do you think you're going to get around it? And as a result, there was no discussion about the points in my letter. It was, I got fired for cause because I violated their spamming policy. And Tom, then I openly criticized a new policy. So, yeah.
Tom, I went through a cancel culture experience myself that was analogous to what you sort of experienced at Georgian College. And I had the sensation, and this may be, it reveals my own naivete, but at the time that I said some things publicly about the way that judges are being selected in this country, I thought that I was living in the Canada that I grew up in. And so I thought that I never imagined that my views would result in being attacked by the CBC, by, Justin Trudeau's, henchman, Mr. Faber from U of T. I didn't imagine all that would happen to me. I wonder in that Georgian College situation, were you in that mindset as well? Were you functioning under some naivete, or did you know at that time, you were sort of crossing over the threshold, and that this probably could be something that would get a silver bullet shot at you?
That's a great question, because what my actual original goal of that email was, I knew that there was a lot of faculty out there that were very uncomfortable with what was happening, but they all felt isolated and alone. And it worked. It worked really well to isolate and make Canadians feel alone. So I didn't think that anybody who was uncomfortable realized that there was a group of other people that were feeling the same. We weren't organized. And so my goal was, I sent it out to all these faculty expecting that some of them would say, yeah, this guy's right, and I agree with what he's saying. That's not what happened at all. In fact, it was just the opposite. I would say the vast majority of the faculty at Georgian College on that particular email turned on me. Right. In a very bullying, sort of childish way. Right. But this is what you're going to expect with certain college faculty in Ontario that will not go against the grain because they're too tired for their cushy jobs.
Yeah.
And that's the reality of the situation. They're not going to rock the boat and disrupt their paychecks. And they're going to just fall in line.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how ridiculous a policy is. Doesn't matter how illegal it is. They're going to fall in line if they're told to do it because they're afraid of losing their jobs.
Yeah. Thomas Sowell has a great quotation about this. He says, anyone who studies the history of ideas should notice how much more often people on the political left, college professors, more so than others, denigrate and demonize those who disagree with them instead of answering their arguments. And it seems to me what happened to you in church and college is a great example of that. So anyway, it was sort of a blessing in a way because it sort of set you off on a very important course, didn't it?
It did. And I, originally when I did get called to go to the convoy, my expectation was I would go for a couple days. I packed clothes for 5 days just in case it got prolonged, but I'd go for a couple days. I'd find somebody really smart and I'd say, okay, here, you take over and I'm going to head home.
Right.
That's what my expectation was. And it turned out I was there for 22 days. A lot longer than I had anticipated.
Yeah. We had a similar conversation with Chris Barber on the show, but he had a bit of a different sensation than you in the sense that he didn't think it was going to last very long, but when he got to Ottawa, he had no idea what to do with himself. But your reaction from reading the book was very different. And I think that has a lot to do with the way that you are trained militarily.
Yes.
You are a tactical, not only a tactical thinker, you're a tactical expert. You're an expert in that. And you sort of, I got the impression from reading the book, you sort of adopted the maxim, see a need, fill a need. And when you recognize very quickly that people like Chris Barber needed direction, and that no one else was going to step into that void, into that breach, and so you did. And so you recognized that very early on, and you became very much a part of the active brain of the convoy. And the other thing I got from your book, which is very valuable, is that things actually on the ground were very well organized when you consider the let's say the amount of tumult that was going on at the time. There were a lot of factors you couldn't control, but you were very much involved in controlling what you could control. I got that sense from you, the way you describe things in the book. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, that's very fair. There are certain things that you have to understand that you can't control, but you might be able to influence. And, I've talked about this before. There's these three circles that I try to follow. There's the circle of control, the circle of influence, and really the circle of interest. You have no control over your circle of interest, but you can monitor it.
Right.
But if you have a circle of influence, but you don't necessarily control it, your objective should be to see if there's a way for you to control what you're influencing, because ultimately the only thing that you have available at your fingertips are the things that you can directly control. So you have to understand which circle things sort of fit. And if I would like for people to start in this country that are on this side of what's happening in Canada, I'd like them to spend a lot less time on their circle of interest, let's say, and go down less rabbit holes. Focus more on your circles of influence and definitely what you can control. Because if you can't control it and you can't influence it, why are you spending the vast amount of your energy on things that really you can't do anything about? So I looked at the convoy in very much the same way. And, it did take me a long time, longer than I expected, to figure out who everybody was when I arrived there. Because I didn't know anybody. I didn't know a single person. And the person who brought me there, James Botter, I had a 15-minute phone call with him and I couldn't pick him out of a police lineup. And so, that's the only person I knew when I arrived there. And then as time went on, I could figure out who was talk and who was somebody who actually could deliver. Right. And that took quite a while. And, when I look at I didn't know who Chris Barber was. I didn't know who Tamara was. I didn't know any of the big name social media players. I had no idea who they were. But once I figured it out and I understood how people responded to them and what they liked to do, what, the things they were involved in, that's where I knew it's like, okay, Chris is the tool for this job. Tamara is the tool for that job. I'll go talk to them and see how they feel about it. But I was very careful to never be in a position where I was ordering people to do things.
I see.
I tried to give my counsel and advise them on the best course of action and see if that made sense to them. And if it did, good. If it didn't, I've got to live with the decision because I didn't start the convoy. I'm there to volunteer and to help it out. So that's kind of the approach that I took.
One of the things that you couldn't control, but became very important, was the media reaction, the way the media was reporting this. And not only the media, the Ottawa police. I pulled a tweet from the Ottawa police that said, protesters, we told you to leave. We gave you time to leave. We were slow and methodical, yet you were assaultive and aggressive with the officers and the horses. Based on your behavior, we are responding by including helmets and batons for our safety. Here's another one. This is reported by Ottawa police. She tweeted out, protesters were assaulting officers with weapons, warranting the deployment of mid-range impact weapons, ARWEN, to stop the violent actions of the protesters. This is clearly false, right?
Yes.
But here you have the Ottawa police totally misrepresenting what was going on the ground. Then you had the mass media doing likewise in unison. Were you shocked by that?
I was shocked and very disappointed in the dishonesty.
Yeah.
Every time we tried to have a contact with the Ottawa police in particular, we tried to not engage in deception. And that's an important thing because we wanted the police on our side, not to say, hey, we're going to start protesting with you. That's not what I mean. But we wanted them to say, hey, as long as everything is safe and responsible, we are not going to arrest you. We are going to actually uphold your Section 2 charter right, which is to peacefully assemble. And so, that's one of the rights in that section.
Yeah.
And so we thought it's better to have them as a partner than to be in direct opposition with the police, because that just gives them justifies their ability to use more kinetic energy against protesters.
Right.
So when I hear about these tweets that they put out, I mean, these are outright lies. And you have to remember, police forces, police departments do have access to behavioral science teams. Police engage in psychological warfare. They have a different name for it, but they do engage in psychological warfare. They do engage in psychological and behavioral science operations. That's normal, and I don't criticize that. I'm just saying that they understand how to manipulate public sentiment. They use it for fighting crime, or that they're supposed to. But in this particular case, what's disturbing is that they would actively tell lies against a peaceful protest that they knew to be peaceful.
Right.
And I'll give you an example why I know they know this is because I was there when Candace and the other man got run over by the horse. I was like 15 feet away when it happened. Overhead was UAVs, and on the roof of the Senate building, because it happened right in front of the Senate building, there was a sniper team up there with scopes, cameras, and multiple police officers up there. So I knew that the UAV was recording everything. I knew the snipers were recording everything. Obviously, police officers are going to have cameras there for collection of evidence when this thing goes to trial. So they had to be collecting evidence the whole entire time they were there. And the same day that Candace and the other man were run over by the horse, they lied. Chief Bell came out and actually said that they threw a bike at the horse. It was a walker. They knew there was no horse. He knew that they were lying, and he still went on national television, and he did it. And they never retracted any of their lies. And it was disgusting because we were always acting in good faith with the police. And there was an incident where I had cautioned them. I was very careful not to threaten police, but I cautioned them. I said, look, after the night they raided Coventry, I said, we're not going to get into tit for tat unless you guys force us into a tit for tat. But what you guys did by going and stealing fuel for heaters and food at Coventry, when you went and confiscated that stuff, I actually call it stealing.
Yeah.
You've achieved nothing except to get more support for us from the public.
Right.
And you took that risk. In fact, it was so bad that they actually got into a fight over it with the OPP. The OPP
Really?
were quite upset that the Ottawa police chose to do that raid. And, you know, I said, your raid at Coventry, that's your freebie. We're not going to escalate this. We see the play. We're not stupid. We're not going to escalate it. That is your freebie. However, if you continue to do stupid things, you're going to win stupid prizes. Mm-hmm. And don't forget, we have 4 other installations on the outside of the city. Mm. And if you want, we will start doing stupid things, but we're never going to exceed the level that you bring it to. Mm-hmm. So if you want to play games, we'll play games, but we hope that you rethink your strategy and don't do this. Mm-hmm. And I think for the most part, they rethought it. I think the OPP were quite upset at the Ottawa police for doing what they did. So we didn't see too much of that, but we did see the lying in the media, in the social media. Yeah. We did continue to see those lies.
My father-in-law, actually, we sponsored him to go to the Freedom Convoy, and so he gave us daily sort of reports about what was going on there. Like many Canadians who had access to what was happening there, we were shocked by the obvious contrast between what we were hearing about in the mass media and what was being reported to us by friends and family and on things like Facebook. But there was a point at which the whole tenor of the thing really changed for me, my perception of it. And that was when you and sort of the sort of leadership team of the convoy were getting together on Facebook and we're broadcasting about your concerns about that the police or the military were going to come in and forcibly shut down the convoy. That must have been a very, very trying time. I know you talk about this in the book. I wonder if you could maybe share what that was like for you. I know that you're trained militarily, so your approach to it probably was different. But that must have been a very frightening time for those people who were involved in the leadership group.
It was actually the fear and the paranoia was very extreme at that point. And we had been notified by the city through the media, in fact, that the police were going to start euthanizing dogs. Like there was a lot of truckers brought their dogs that were in the truck with them. They were going to euthanize the dogs, and they were going to start taking the children away from the truckers.
Yes,
who were there. And there was all sorts of rumors going on. And again, this is where I'm saying that they were using a form of psychological warfare against the mental health of the peaceful protesters. And so the rumors were going around, and we did get notified by people who knew that they were setting up a processing center for mass arrests, which we expected. I mean, anybody could have anticipated that. Yes, they're bringing in more police. We knew this. We were getting reports. There are people inside various police departments that were sympathizing with us. So we were getting fed information, but you had to take it with a grain of salt. You didn't know if you were being lied to or not. But we treated it as if though, okay, it does make sense that they're going to come in and start making mass arrests. But I kept hearing people say, look, the military's coming, the military's coming, the military. And I said, okay, this needs to stop. So the first time I think I did a real individual or public statement where I did a lot of the speaking, the very first time it was, yes, I was talking to the public, but in reality, I'm sending direct messages to the chief of police,
right,
to the political people, and
very
I'm
very
deliberately,
tactical, very tactical, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm talking to, I'm letting the military know
Right.
that we understand that you don't have a mission here.
Mm-hmm.
So, that kind of calms the nerves of the protesters, but it also tells the military, like, we're not saying we're calling your bluff. What we're saying is you don't have a mission here. We know it and you know it.
Right.
So nobody should be fueling that fire.
Mm-hmm.
That's nothing. I know after the fact, I had been told that the military was staff checking to see if they could, if they were called, what kind of support would they offer. I knew this was happening at the time. It's normal standard operating procedure for the military to start staff checking, looking at availability, costing it, what would it take to put together a team to go there? That's all normal stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew that they didn't have a clear mission. And it
How
wasn't
did you know?
outside of the
How
control.
did you know that? That's an important
Because
point.
because I worked at the GAG20 summit. And I learned what it was like to support when the military gets requested to support law enforcement. And in the military, we call it ALEA, Assistance to Law Enforcement Agencies.
I see.
And so from the training and the experience that I had as a military member in, working with the police in the past, there was just no clear mission statement for the military that they could get involved in a clearly law enforcement type of a scenario.
Mm-hmm.
So going back to the GAG20, it was pounded into us that we are not to be seen as leading a law enforcement activity, meaning that summit was in the hands, under the jurisdiction of, strangely enough, Bill Blair at the time. That the police were the lead agencies. We were there in support of.
Right.
So I anticipated maybe the military could get called out to provide some flying kitchens to feed the police. But then I thought, no, that's kind of ridiculous. They're going to eat on the economy and they're going to spend a lot of taxpayers' money.
Right.
So really, ultimately, there was just never a clear mission. And as we saw, there was no mission for the Canadian military.
Yeah.
But it was important that people understood, like, calm down, take a breath. That's not their job.
Yeah.
We are not armed. We have not taken over, there's complete mobility. We have not denied access to any government official to get to the House of Commons or anything like that. We haven't interrupted any critical infrastructure. We haven't blocked an international border. And we've done nothing. We're on the streets. And
Right.
in fact, I know, because I heard the testimony from the police, all roads were open to emergency services like fire, police, and ambulance.
Right.
All of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of the things though that did happen, and of course you had a sense of this, I guess maybe in hindsight, but in addition to what the Ottawa police were saying, and we heard what the two Supreme Court Chief Justices said, the
Mm-hmm.
Prime Minister in his public statements, when he finally paid attention to the the Freedom Convoy, he started using the language of terrorism, and this was
Mm-hmm.
a very specific for a very specific purpose. When I heard that language as a lawyer, my ears pricked up because I knew immediately that meant that they were looking at invoking Emergencies Act legislation in order to quell what they were regarding as an uprising. And I mentioned my cancel culture experience. One of the reasons that why I got in trouble is that early on in the pandemic, I wrote publicly that the Trudeau government was messing around with the Emergencies Act legislation, and I predicted that they were going to use it at some point during the COVID-19 pandemic. And the Freedom Convoy ultimately created that opportunity for them. And we're still living out the effects of this. And your book talks about this. It also talks about kind of the next phase. And I don't want to gloss over what happened, how the Freedom Convoy was broken up, but people know about that. But I want to go forward into the actual Emergencies Act inquiry, if we can call it that.
Sure.
It was obviously something of a sham. You were there, you testified in it. What were your impressions of that inquiry? Good, bad, ugly. What was your sense of what was going on there?
Complete like totally corrupt process. Grotesque, corrupt, really disappointing. And I was saying to somebody this morning, the Liberal government, they are the most corrupt government I have ever even contemplated. I'm 50 years old, so I've seen a few governments come and go.
I'm with you 100%.
And yeah, and I've never seen a government so corrupt. They're so corrupt that they don't care that we know they're corrupt.
Yep.
And of course, that's with the help of Jagmeet Singh. And if Jagmeet doesn't come through for them, they always fall back on the Bloc Québécois.
Yeah.
And so you've got this government, these members of parliament that just don't care about the corruption.
Yeah.
And so when I sat through that Public Order Emergency Commission, I was quite surprised in the first 2.5 to 3 weeks. I thought it was actually going very well.
Mm-hmm.
And then I actually did a video on it, and I said, I'm surprised this is going very well. And it was as if though Rouleau watched my video and said, yeah, wait for Monday.
Uh-huh.
And it just flipped. And we could see that it was, great example, Peter Slowly, the former chief of Ottawa at the time. He, I think, spent 2 days on the stand. 2 days, or at least a day and a half. I got, I think, 3 hours. Some of the other participants got maybe 3 hours of testimony. But we have a guy who quit when things got really, really tough and somehow became the focus for a day and a half of the testimony. And it was all about him and his lawyer. He had a very good lawyer, a very expensive lawyer, who was there trying to protect him from being the fall guy for the government, which we all thought was really quite bizarre. Mm-hmm. Another thing that was really, really bizarre to us was the fact that you had the entire Injustice Department of the federal government hired outside counsel.
Yeah.
And because their own counsel wasn't good enough or wasn't up to the task. So they went out and got a bunch of really high priced guns to come in there and make sure that we never got to the truth, that we never examined. It was supposed to be about examining the government's actions on the invocation of the Emergencies Act. The only group of people, there was our lawyer, Brendan Miller, Bathsheba, and Eva Chipiuk.
Right.
And Eva was at the convoy. There was them, and there were some lawyers from JCCF and a couple of other really good law teams that were there. It was a very, very small group out of the 25 groups of lawyers that were there that were focused on what the actual mandate of the commission was supposed to be about.
Right.
Everybody else was too busy pointing fingers. The OPP's lawyers were pointing at someone else. The Ottawa police was pointing at someone else. Nobody was getting to the heart of the matter, which was, did the government have the justification? Did they meet any of the 4 conditions under Section 2 of the CSIS Act?
Right.
The answer was no. And the reason I know it was no is because Rouleau admitted it in court when Haddam from the JCCF was cross-examining David Vigneault, the director of CSIS, and he was asking him about the 4 conditions. And Rouleau said to him something to the effect of, look, you've only got 10 minutes. I'm not sure I would have wasted my time going through each of those sections because it's been well established that they didn't meet any of them.
Right.
And I was like, okay, it's over. It's over right there. Like Rouleau just admitted that the government did not meet any of those conditions to invoke the act. And then his report came out and he says, yep, the government met the very high threshold to invoke the act. But somebody else more intelligent than me could have probably had a different opinion. It's like, I think half the room had a different opinion than you. Mm-hmm. And so I looked at that commission and I thought, what a waste of $20+ million. Mm-hmm. Absolute waste. And what was the outcome? Canadians got robbed of the truth. Mm-hmm. And now what is that report going to do? It's going to give Justin Trudeau and his government the top cover to go and make it better for the government to do things like invoke the Emergency Act over its citizens.
Yeah. And that was,
That's what it
yeah.
achieved.
And you talk about the corruption. One of the concerns that I had when I saw the wording of the act as a lawyer, it made it very clear that they had jerry rigged it from the very beginning. They engineered it from the back end because
Yes.
there was never any way, there was never any set of facts because of the way the inquiry was set up, whereby they could be vigorously cross-examined and brought to task. And so you talk about Rouleau, but really it would have been almost impossible for anyone hearing that on the basis of the way the act is worded to find against the government. And so when you talk about corruption, that's how deep it goes, folks. It's very, very serious and very, frankly, un-Canadian. And it's shocking for people of our generation, but you and I, Tom, are both in our 50s. You know, we're old enough to remember when this was absolutely inconceivable. I mean, we've had prime ministers of, you know, questionable judgment and have made mistakes in the past, but I'm with you. I've never seen this level of banana republic corruption that this Liberal government engages in, and it just seems to never stop. It's as though they want to condition us to expect it from them.
Yes. And this Chief Justice Wagner is, you know, here's the issues that I find with him. He, first of all, when the Governor General changed over and they had a vacant seat for a while, he was sitting in the Governor General's chair while also sitting in the Chief Justice's chair.
Yeah.
I don't know how that situation was ever even contemplated as something that would be good for Canada. Yeah. Second thing is, by him making that public statement that you spoke about earlier, that automatically, in my mind, disqualifies him from being anywhere near any case that will eventually make its way to the Supreme Court. He has now, in my mind, disqualified himself. He has brought himself and the Supreme Court into disrepute by making those public comments. That was so unbelievably unprofessional, and it should have led to his resignation. Now, you see, there's some really shady stuff that happened with Justice Brown, and he's no longer on the Supreme Court, which is interesting with him.
Right.
Is if you know that case, his background is actually in informed consent. That's one of the areas of law that he's an expert on.
Yes.
And it's interesting that the one guy on the Supreme Court who's an expert in informed consent is no longer on the Supreme Court.
And then Albertan.
And in Albertan at a time when these cases are going to start percolating to the very top.
Well, and to finish your thought on Justice Wagner, you know, a couple of things. You know, firstly, the Supreme Court has refused to hear any appeal dealing with COVID, and even ones, significant ones. And secondly, there were a group of lawyers, some friends of mine, who actually filed a complaint with the Judicial Council of Canada about Justice Wagner. Here's the problem. Not only was he sitting as the Governor General and the Chief Judge, he was the head of the Judicial Council of Canada. So he's there sitting on his own complaint, which was summarily dismissed. So we've got problems on a lot of different levels. And so this brings me, your dissatisfaction with the Emergencies Act inquiry was part of the impetus for you writing the book, right?
It was, and I had decided to write the book about a couple of months before the inquiry had started.
Oh, really? Okay.
In the summertime, but I waited 6 months. I thought long and hard whether I was going to do this.
Yeah.
And I did decide to reach out to a lot of the key people that I worked with during the convoy. And I said, look, I'm thinking about writing a book. Do you have an issue with this? Because I felt like it's not just my story to tell. And I wanted to make sure that the people that I worked with sort of gave their blessing. And so overwhelmingly everybody did. I can't think of anyone who said, no, don't. So I started the book and I had a very clear objective in the beginning, which was treat it like I had a GoPro on my head. So if the GoPro didn't capture it, it's not going in the book.
Yeah, you say that your book is not an historical account. You say, I wanted to make it about the good and the bad, the difficulties, the challenges, what it is like for somebody to get dropped in the middle of a tornado and try to make sense of it.
Yeah. And the other thing, I didn't want to criticize anybody on our side.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, to tell the complete story, I had to tell about the incident, but I just left out the names.
Yeah.
I thought
But you
that
had to
was
be
a fair
honest,
compromise.
honest in the telling.
Had to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And you know, I tried to walk people through everything, what my thought processes were during various weeks, because week after week after week, it seemed like my role kept evolving. And then the things that I was involved with were things that I wouldn't necessarily have been involved with at the very beginning when I first arrived. You know, I don't want to say I quickly moved up the ladder, but the ladder formed and I ended up going up it.
Yeah.
So that wasn't my intention. I really thought I'm just going to go there, make a sustainment plan, make a few spreadsheets, get organized, get a cycle going, a daily routine, and then go home. That's what I thought I could do for everybody. But what I found was there was a vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
There was something desperately missing. And so I thought, okay, I need to work on filling that piece. And again, I still had every intention of passing that off to someone else and then going home. But the situation kept fundamentally changing.
Yeah.
So I had to stay.
Yeah.
And, there was another group, another headquarters, you could say, and they were doing great things. And we decided on the first night what we were going to divide up and what they were going to be responsible for, what we were going to take. And that worked out better than expected.
Mm-hmm.
But really the change for me came when Keith and Eva showed up.
Right.
They came with a group of lawyers, but some of the lawyers went back home, weren't required or whatever. I don't know why they went home, but they did. I'm in contact with some of them. They're great people. But Keith and Eva stuck around for the entire time. And once I connected with them, it was a game changer for me in the role that I was now starting to play.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
really important that the lawyers showed up.
Yeah. I've known Keith a very long time. We were classmates in law school. He had an interesting post the other day about the trial, trial. He said the longest and most expensive trial for mischief charges in the history of Canada with no end in sight. That's very much, Keith Wilson.
Yes.
But I want to talk about, your book, and maybe you don't like this comparison. Hopefully you don't mind it. I found that your book was very, very different from Tamara Leach's account. And both books are worth reading. I would urge people to read them, but yours has a very different type of story to tell. It gives a different insight. But what's unfair about both of them, about what's happened to both of you, is the criticism you've received. And you made a post about this on Twitter recently. You said, in the wake of my involvement in the convoy and subsequent experiences with the POEC, I encountered a profound insight shared by a fellow activist. Some people went to the convoy to do something. Some people went to the convoy to become something, with a poignant warning against the latter as a fool's errand. Have you received some criticism for your involvement in the convoy and writing the book as you're sort of an opportunist? Anybody who's read the book would not have that impression, but I understand, that maybe that's something that's been leveled at you. Has that happened, and has it troubled you?
Well, from day one of me getting home, I started to receive a lot of criticism. Yeah. And the disappointing part is, if they don't have a name on their social media or a photo, if they're not actually standing up and being accounted for by who they are, then I don't engage with it. And I stopped doing that a while ago. But the most upsetting thing is there is a core group of people that were at the convoy that did participate in it, that I worked with every day, and so did Chris and Tamara and Keith. There's this core group who have, within 6 months of the convoy ending, have been created this camp, and it is, no matter what we say or do, this group attacks us like viciously. And they constantly lie. They make these wild accusations that don't even make any sense. They've all been spoken about openly on interviews or at the commission or various other platforms. And what I find is this group of people, I do the best I can not to retaliate. I mean, I've had a few caveats where I have retaliated because I don't like how they go after people that went to the convoy for the right reasons, which was to save this country from this current government. Right. They weren't people that went there because they were nobodies and now they want to become something. You know, and this is a core group of people that are upset that they are not the face of the convoy, that they're not getting the notoriety of Tamara right. Leach. You know, they're constantly putting us down to try to elevate themselves. And I find that behavior is just disgusting. And no matter how many times I bite my tongue, let's say 50 or 60 to 1, I might reply and say, hey, that's just not cool. I get attacked for being divisive. So it's this thing where it's like, I can't retaliate. I can't defend myself and nobody comes to my defense or Keith's defense. I mean, you know, yeah. Keith, he's a lawyer, and Eva, they can't get into these online disputes with people that are attacking them on right. baseless things. One of these individuals is actually suing Keith and Eva. Right. While he constantly posts all the evidence on social media for him to get basically annihilated when he gets to court. He's going to get annihilated. And every day he's on social media giving all the evidence that anyone would need to crush his lawsuit.
In the court of public opinion, yeah.
It's terrible. I mean, it's there. He puts it up every single day. One of the other people, he wrote a book about the convoy. He's gone on I'm just happy that he apparently bought my book to read, because then he went on and said that, this idiot did exactly what I said he did. And he's admitting it on in his own book. Yeah. It's like, you weren't even there, buddy. You don't even know what you're talking about. Yeah. So this is, we do get an exceptional amount of personal attacks. Now, I will say this. From day one, it was my observation the first day I arrived that we were too thin on Wellington. Right. And this is an important thing, because this is one of the most controversial things that came up during the convoy. And this was a decision that I probably influenced more than anyone else. And it was one of my 3 priorities. And I talk about my priorities in the book. And the priority was Wellington. Right. And it was my absolute belief that the more truckers we had on Wellington actually strengthened our strategic position. So, you know, in terms of, you know, tactics and stuff like that, you have tactics. That's the tactical level. That right. is on the ground, on the street, the tactical situation between us and the police. You've got operational, didn't really apply so much here in traditional ways, but strategic. We wanted a strategic outcome. That protest was a strategic level protest. It's on the doorstep of the federal government. It doesn't get any higher than that. And so to achieve a strategic outcome, we needed to be right there on Justin Trudeau's doorstep, right, in the Liberal government and the NDP. We were not there for tactical purposes. We were unarmed. We were peaceful. We had no interest in deception operations against law enforcement of any kind. We were not there to fight. We were there to peacefully assemble. That's why we were there, and to express our objection to what the government was doing to us. Mm-hmm. So when people criticize the fact that, oh my God, you put us all on Wellington so we could be kettled. We could easily be kettled by the police. Well, I'm sorry, but at that point, if the police decide that they are going to go in and make mass arrests, that is a tactical situation. And we were not there for tactical reasons. We weren't there to fight. Right. We were there for strategic reasons. So putting everyone in a line on Wellington to be mass arrested was not the main concern. The concern is we need to put pressure on the federal government and get out of the residential areas. Right. So that the city doesn't have to take the heat. We can put the heat right on the prime minister's doorstep.
Mm-hmm.
That was the strategic objective.
Right.
There was no tactical objective. And the criticism around being told, oh, you put us all in a turkey chute to be lined up and kettled. First off, you didn't know what kettling was before the convoy. Second, you don't understand what you're doing if you think that you're there for a tactical objective.
Right.
If you were there for a tactical objective, you should leave, because now you're talking insurrection. Now you're talking Emergencies Act stuff.
Yeah.
We didn't want that. That was what we were trying to avoid. And that's why I work so closely with the lawyers as well, to avoid the pitfalls, because as I talk about in the book, I was going to put a bunch of tractors on the front lawn of the Supreme Court.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I listened to legal advice. I understood the strategic outcome to that.
Yeah.
And so this is where these criticisms comes from, these people that really are out of their league.
Yeah.
And they're selling themselves as these big, General Pattons and stuff like that.
Yes.
It's frustrating. I'll be honest. It's frustrating.
Yeah, it must be for someone with military training. Although what you just said does tie into the sort of the last thing I want to ask you about. And that is this. So you posted recently on X, you said, before everyone starts buying gold and silver, consider investing in skills, tools, and equipment.
Yes.
Learn about preserving and growing food year round. Take advantage of hardware store sales on things like nails, screws, etc. Seeds.
Yes.
If you have everything you need, then go back to metals. Now that ties into something that is a subtle message in your book. You don't hammer on it, but it ties into something else. A friend of mine named Colonel Dave Redman. You probably know who that is.
Oh, I know him. I know him. I'm a huge fan of his.
Yeah, like you, a very distinguished military career. And I was on a roundtable recently for the National Citizens Inquiry with he and Sean Buckley. And Dave said something to me that kind of rattled me, but it tied into the way that this Freedom Convoy ended up. The use of let's call it military police force, and your book. And Dave talked about something that in Canada we have taken for granted for a very long time, and that's public security. And he talked about public security in terms of having a number of different factors. You'll know what these are from your military training, but most of us lay people are ignorant of these. But part of it is the police, part of it is the military, but part of it is just this sense that this feeling that we're all together and we're living in a safe society, where we don't have to worry about being out on our streets. Dave is of the view that we're quickly losing that. We don't have really a functioning military at this point. He says less than 10,000 troops. The police are not behaving the way we've been accustomed that they've behaved in terms of maintaining law and order. And perhaps most importantly, we seem to be at odds. I think we are at odds realistically with our governments. And so is that kind of tying into what you posted there on Twitter, is kind of a cautionary tale saying, look, folks, don't take this public security for granted. It's tenuous right now and we could lose it. Or is that going too far?
No, I think that's a great observation, because, a couple of years ago on, I should say maybe a year and a half ago on YouTube, I had posted a comment on a group talking about metals and all that stuff. And I said, wouldn't seeds be more valuable to you in a full out economic collapse than gold? And the response comment was, yeah, the gold was to buy the seeds, dummy. He actually called me dummy. I thought, wow, who's the dummy here? Because you could show up with a donkey cart full of gold, and I'm not giving you my seeds for your gold. I can't eat that. I can't grow it. And so, my feeling is, because there are a lot of people, and like I've said, I know lots of groups out there that are planning for a full economic collapse. Because if you just recently watch Pierre Poilievre's little documentary video he did about the housing bubble. I did see it. Yes. I've got a master's degree in business, and I can tell you he's right on accurate with this one. The government, the way they have been borrowing money is so excessive that they have put our entire economy is in peril. In 2008, you had the Americans with their housing crisis. They created that through predatory lending. That was all started under Bill Clinton, and it eventually made its way up to George Bush. But we're going to see the same sort of effect because of Justin Trudeau in the future. Like, this is going to catch up with us. You can't unring this bell. I hate to use that kind of thing, but the amount of interest that people are going to have to pay on the debt is so excessive. I would say that in 10 years, it's going to be somewhere around 30 cents on every dollar is going to have to be, if things stayed the same, about 30 cents on every dollar is going to have to be going towards interest payments to banks alone.
Right.
And what's important to understand about that is that interest doesn't even exist. Interest is not printed into the economy. Interest only exists because you agreed to pay excess money that doesn't physically exist to a bank in exchange for money that does exist. Like, we don't print interest. We only print principal amounts.
Right.
And people have to understand that the interest on loans is fictitious. You can't touch it.
Right.
It doesn't exist anywhere. It exists because I say it exists. It exists.
Right.
So when you look at the fact that all of our money, we can't buy houses, we can't afford down payments, and we have to pay ridiculous loans back that Justin Trudeau has taken out, where's that going to leave the economy? It's going to be in trouble. So to go back to your earlier question, I think that the way of the future, if you want to hedge against all this uncertainty and an economic collapse that Justin Trudeau has been building, and don't forget the important thing, you'll own nothing and be happy about it.
Yeah.
And be happy. And so what I'm saying is invest in things that give you skills should the economy collapse.
Right.
Invest in things that are going to insulate you from that eventual collapse. Because I can tell you, mathematically, the economy at some point in the future must collapse. That's what the fractured monetary system is.
Yeah.
And so invest in skills, invest in equipment. When there's a sale on nails, buy them. When there's a sale on tools, buy them. Mm-hmm. And, buy seeds. You can grow microgreens. I did it all summer. I can grow microgreens and from seed to eating on my plate in 7 days, right? A big salad and get those skills, buy those things so that you're more insulated if things get really out of control.
Yeah.
So,
that
was my point.
This is even more concerning than the reality of the situation is the fact that the prime minister and his government are completely disconnected from the reality. In fact, the prime minister, and you probably saw this, came out, and don't guffaw, don't laugh, but he said because his government has been so fiscally responsible, they can actually spend more money. And what are they going to spend money on? Welfare, which of course is you're just pouring gasoline on the fire.
Yes. Yes.
So, but Tom, this has been a really great conversation. I'm so glad that we got to talk with you and learn more about you and your experiences, and especially your book, which is featured on our reading list, and that's where we are today to wrap up.
Good.
Your book is featured.
This is what it looks like.
Yeah, it's it's going to be on our web. It's going to be added to our reading list. We have a reading list on the show.
Thank you.
It's called The People's Emergency Act Freedom Convoy 2022. And as I said, I read it. I find it's unique among the several books that I've read about the Freedom Convoy. And I learned many things about what was going on the ground at the convoy that I would not have understood if I had not read this book. And it's because it's for the reasons that we've learned about from the author. Just his mindset, the way he thinks, his military training, his tactical training, it just gives you a unique understanding of what happened with the Freedom Convoy and also what it means for our country. We've talked about that too. And the book sort of creates a picture of that. What does the convoy mean? Not just what happened. It's not just an historical account. It's like what does this mean for us as Canadians? So I can't give it a stronger recommendation than I already have. The second book, and Tom may have read this one, that I'm going to recommend for our list is called Unvaccinated, How Canada Turned to Hatred and Division. This book is written by Ray Javin, and it says in 2022, Canada and the world welcomed a new revolutionary technology that was supposed to end the COVID-19 pandemic. Unfortunately, the benefits we may have achieved from this medical breakthrough was overshadowed by the harms it created on our society. And we're living through those right now. And of course, it's important to remember that the convoy came about because of the vaccines and the vaccine mandates. That was an important part of the peaceful protest that people like Tom went there to express. And of course, as we learned today, even before he went to the convoy, he took a very courageous stand at the college where he was working and essentially gave up his career for what he believed in. This book similarly, talks about what this means for unvaccinated people and for our country. And so I've added that one to our reading list as well. And with that, Tom, I'd like to turn it over to you. Hopefully you have a suggestion or two for our viewers and listeners. It doesn't have to be about COVID-19 or the convoy. Any other book that you would recommend that would help people gain a better understanding of the topics that we've been discussing today with you?
Yeah, and I had the pleasure of meeting the author of Fistman's Fraud,
Yes.
Regine. I got to meet her a couple of weeks ago. We were in Ottawa, and I think that's a very, very interesting book. This specifically, I think, talks about people involved in the Ontario Science Table, and the way the scientists not only attacked dissenting voices, because it wasn't, no offense to you as a lawyer or your profession, but Sean Buckley raised this really fascinating point not long ago. He said, it was lawyers that created all this legislation, that wrote these mandates.
Amen. We also created all the woke stuff too. That all came out of law schools.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So the scientists were doing the exact same thing as well. Yeah. So I think her book is really an important discovery that Canadians should understand on just how bad the scientific community committed fraud.
Yes.
And for dissenting scientists, how badly they target them, like Dr. Byron Bridle.
Yes.
One of the people on the Ontario Science Table actually started a fake Twitter account and started harassing him and tried to get him fired from his tenured teaching job at the University of Guelph for dissenting opinions. So, again, it's not just the lawyers or the doctors, it's also the scientists who perpetrated this. And there's no point in talking about the media. From what I know, there's 600 new CBC people out looking for jobs. So I'm leaving that alone.
I guess that's a good, that's like a lawyer joke, What do you call 600 people at the bottom of the ocean, or 600 lawyers at the bottom of the ocean? A good start. So but don't worry, we know all the jokes, us lawyers.
All the jokes.
But, but actually, Regina, we're actually looking forward to having her on the show. We're going to be talking about her book. I just read it too, and I think I agree with you. I think it's just brilliant, just like your book is. Tom, we're so grateful for your book and for your time today. Thank you for being our special guest here on Gray Matter and to talking to us about your book and all of your work. It's just a pleasure for me to meet and talk with Canadians like yourself who have shown such tremendous courage in the face of really unimaginable adversity prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. And it's great to see that you've taken the time to collect your thoughts and document them because I think your book is going to be an important document for posterity. As I mentioned off the top of the show, I think books like yours, the ones that have been created, are sort of going into an anthology that is going to be very, very important and a very, very important part of Canadian history. And so I'm very grateful for your book and for your time today. Thanks for being with us today on Gray Matter.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for being one of the lawyers above the surface of the ocean and who is telling the truth, because that's an important thing. Telling the truth is easy to do. It's just hard to be heard.
Yes.
So thank you for doing it.
Very well said. Thanks very much, Tom. It's been our pleasure having you on the program today.
Thank you.